How's it going, Bat family? Welcome to a brand new video on the Batman, and today's video is going to be some new updates. Believe it or not, our Lord and Savior Matt Reeves has come out with a bit of information about the movie, and honestly I want to break down each and every kind of little tidbit that he had to say about it. Now this goes from the tone of the movie, he goes on to discuss where Batman is at, whether that's in his origin, which is kind of obvious that it isn't, but there's some details with that and as to why he didn't want to do an origin, even the time setting of the movie, which if you ask me was kind of obvious, but there was a lot of people saying otherwise every time I mentioned it. But finally, hopefully this will kind of silence, if that's not how you say it, is it? The naysayers about the time setting of this movie and if it's connected to the DCEU or not. Like finally we can talk about that definitively. But really everyone, I think you will enjoy this video because what Matt Reeves has to say, if you're dying to see this film, just like me, you'll be very excited to kind of get into the nit and grit of what he had to say, and that is exactly what I'm going to do. So I'd love your responses down in the comments below. Based on my opinion, maybe you can expand upon it, or maybe you might be thinking something else entirely different to anything I may mention in this video. But go ahead guys and leave a like on it if you do go ahead and enjoy it, and be sure to subscribe to make sure you stay up to date on absolutely anything brand new of the Batman. But let's get into what Matt Reeves had to say. So the first thing that I want to discuss of what Reeves said is in terms of even pitching this movie, and this is what he had to say about that. So I'm going to pitch the version of Batman that I would do, which is going to have a humanist bent. And who knows if they'll have any interest. If they don't, then I won't do it, and that'll be okay. I was really lucky that they said yes. And this is something that is a little bit recycled in terms of what we know already, but I'm sure you guys are fully aware that this version of Batman that Matt Reeves is bringing us in the Batman 2021 and the preceding films after that is going to be a much more humane version of Batman in terms of exploring the struggle of him, and he goes on to talk about that a little bit more, which we'll get onto in a second. And I'm not saying that previous versions of Batman in films, whether it's Nolan's, Burton's, or whatever iteration you want to go for, hasn't explored that struggle, but I really do feel, especially kind of given Matt Reeves's previous films as well, it's going to explore, well, the humanity of it and the struggle that Bruce is going through in this transformation. One thing you may start to recognize with what I say in these videos is I quote Matt Reeves a lot in terms of what he said in the past, and he says that he's given Bruce, or should I say the character of Batman, an arc that will allow him to go through a transformation. So just hearing him say that when he was pitching it, like, you know, if they don't want to do it, then I won't do it, but this is the version I want to go for, basically, with a humanist bent, you know, and in terms of how it's going to be a much more psychological, noir-driven approach. I completely get what he's saying, and to be honest, that is one of the things that makes me most excited about this movie, because I feel like Robert Pattinson's really good at getting into the acting chops and grit of the substance of Bruce Wayne and Batman that Matt Reeves is striving for. And this is what he said afterwards to expand upon that initial comment about just pitching the movie. It's not even like that's an approach that I take. Like, it's some kind of idea of, wouldn't it be great? It's sort of the only thing that allows me to understand how to do it. I can only understand where the camera goes and how to talk about the story, how to write the story, how to talk to the actors, if I understand emotionally what it is I have to do. Otherwise, I'd be lost. Some people are incredible choreographers and they know how to create an incredible visual dance, all that kind of stuff, and I love that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, I have to understand it emotionally, which I truly feel speaks volumes to the essence of this film. Like, sure, this will be a Batman film, but this will have the sentiments and sincerity of these characters that we, more than ever, than what we've ever known before, if that even makes sense. And that's what, yet again, reiterating what I said with that first part that I read out, is what I'm most excited for, and just hearing those words come from the director's mouth himself, in terms of he gets like kind of most corners of the business, obviously, or the roles that, you know, that you have to fill in order to create a movie, but for him, he has to understand it on this emotional level, otherwise it's just not necessarily even a thing that he wants to do, and he's pouring that humane kind of element into this movie. And this kind of brings me back to that moment, if you guys remember, when Robert Pattinson, and I think it was trending, some people getting angry about it, some people understanding it, Yeah, I mean, I got what he was saying, and he kind of walked back on it, but he was really just having a laugh. And what I mean by that is when Robert Pattinson a few months ago, if I remember correctly, said that Batman isn't really a superhero, and I completely understood what he was saying there. And that's more like, I feel like he got kind of told that in terms of when talking about this movie, understanding the story. It's like, this movie isn't necessarily going to be a superhero movie. It's going to be more about, as I keep saying, I don't want to repeat myself too much. He wasn't really saying that blanket statement of like, oh, Batman isn't a superhero, when you could argue he is. I mean, he's a hero really, but you know, it's that's a whole different debate. But kind of the reason why I brought that up is because what Matt Reeves says next kind of segues off that comment I remember Pattinson making a few months ago. And that is when Reeves said, I wanted to do not an origin tale, but a tale that would still acknowledge his origin, in that it formed who he is. Like, this guy, he's majorly struggling, and this is how he's trying to rise above that struggle. But that doesn't mean that he even fully understands, you know, it's that whole idea of the shadow self and what's driving you, and how much of that you can incorporate and how much of it you're doing that you're unaware of. And I think that is exactly what Pattinson meant. I mean, I know this isn't really part of this video, but that's if you kind of look through that lens that Pattinson was saying whenever he got asked about, or whenever he said how Batman isn't really a superhero, I think that's the vision he kind of got sold with this movie. Like, sure, Batman is a hero, don't get me wrong, he understands that, but the pitch and everything about this movie that Reeves is doing with this Batman, especially him being year 2, especially with Reeves even talking about how, you know, it's that whole idea of this shadow self and what's even driving Bruce Wayne, and how much of that you can incorporate, but also how much of it that you're doing that you're unaware of. Like, it's got to very much show, that's what I love about this. We're not going to get the whole, you know, pearls necklace origin of Martha Wayne and Thomas Wayne, but the fact that they're still going to acknowledge the origin is still very vital to any Batman movie, especially and significantly this one, because with what we know that Reeves is capitalizing on here, and the story that he wants to tell on such an emotional level, and most importantly, bearing in mind that this is going to be in year 2 of Batman's career, of course we're going to see that huge driving force, that huge shadow self of Bruce that is compelling him to carry out this crazy idea of wearing a bat suit and going out in Gotham City's rooftops at night. Like, and I can't wait for that, especially on such a character study way, if you will. If that makes sense, that's what's compelling about this. But that is what he responded anyway when he was asked about what he's most excited about when exploring the billionaire Bruce Wayne. But it also brings me just, you know, because somebody may ask it in the comments down below, I've spoke about this before as well, in terms of if they're still going to acknowledge the past, could we see flashbacks? I think it's possible. I think it would be really awesome if they somehow showed his training, but at the same time, I don't want it to be spotlighted. I don't want it to be like a part of the film and then he comes back to Gotham. If they're going to do it at all, when Bruce is like going through a really rough moment in the movie, he might get knocked down or something like that, it might flash to when he gets knocked down in his training and he might remember a moment, and then it goes back to present and he applies that knowledge. I know that's such a you know, an off the cuff idea of mine, literally as I'm talking, but that's how I would rather, if they're going to do that at all, than actually showing whole scenes of his training. Like, don't get me wrong, that'd be really awesome, but this film really isn't going to be that origin, but I really wouldn't mind it kind of littered throughout the story in a way that's relevant to whatever's happening in that scene, in that moment, in the movie. But at the same time, I really don't think it's necessary, because we're going to see, as Reeves said, it's like, whilst we're not doing the origin tale, but a tale that would still acknowledge his origins, we're going to see that just explored in general. Like, I've said this in my videos before, this is Batman. Like, you know, he's in the suit, he's got the bat ears, he's got the bat emblem, he may not have the batarangs yet because he seems to have ninja throwing spikes and stuff like that, but that doesn't mean he's graduated Batman. He may be that Cape Crusader of Gotham, but he's far from being the Dark Knight Overwatch protector of Gotham that everyone knows about. And that's how this movie, I feel, is going to mainly capitalize on just the origin aspect, because that within itself is an origin. Like, he's Batman, but he's just not the Batman yet, but by the end of the movie he will be from Batman to the Batman. But expanding upon this even more, he goes on to say there's something in there that feels very psychological, very emotional, and it felt like there was a way of exploring that along with the corruption in this place Gotham that feels very current. I think it always does. There's almost no time when you can't do a story about corruption, but today it seems incredibly resonant, and maybe, from my perspective, maybe more so than maybe at other times. Now, I completely agree with that. Like that's like a way to sum up this movie. Now, we've kind of already been over the whole how he says it's very psychological and very emotional, and he feels like there will be a way of exploring that with the corruption of Gotham. I think that's such a beautiful way to explore this first movie, because Gotham is like one of the most doggiest dog places, but not in just like a crime level, but from to a political level as well. And I think this billionaire Bruce Wayne in Robert Pattinson will really be a man of the people at the same time. But also it can't get enough done, so he has to go out as his Cape Crusader as well. But then there's all of these other elements like the Riddler. We've know there's been other things coming out like no more lies on the face of some victim. We know that Gil Coulson, played by Peter Sarsgaard, is going to be Gotham's DA, but I believe when he said on a talk show, some of you have probably already seen this, that he's going to be like basically a politician who has difficulty telling the truth, which is, politics. But I think, when you kind of reference that to what Riddler has done to someone saying no more lies, it makes you think, what is Riddler trying to do here? He may not agree with the whole situation politically. Maybe that's going on in Gotham as well. But he's kind of tackling it in a way that Nigma would, in a not so kind of good way of going about it. And so that's how Bruce may get involved to obviously kind of counteract him. And as Matt Reeves said himself, like this whole story of feeling very psychological and very emotional, that will be Bruce's trial and tribulation throughout the movie when coming up against his intellectual rival, being the Riddler. And I just think, obviously, that's going to tell for an amazing story and such a solid foundation for this trilogy. And obviously, hopefully, Batman by the end of it comes out a lot more confident, fully formed, not fully sculpted, but a lot more than what he is at the beginning, for sure. But what speaks even more volumes about what people have speculated about before is through what he says here. And that is, I just felt like, well, what I'd love to do is to get a version of this Batman character where he's not fully formed, where there's something to do in this context with who that guy would be in this world today, and to ground him in all of these broken ways, because at the end of the day, this guy is doing all of this to deal with trauma in his past. Now, I think that fairly obviously spells out that this is set in current day, present day, whatever. That is not Ben Affleck's Batman, a prequel to it or whatever. I think that was kind of obvious from the early days, even before Jeffrey Wright took over J.K. Simmons is Commissioner Gordon, even though he might not even be commissioner in this movie. But I think that will iron that out. I just wanted to say that. I think it's fairly straightforward that they, and I'm totally on board with this. I've always wanted this in the first place. I'm a fan of Ben Affleck's Batman, but I'm just saying with this, I've always been of the attitude, yeah, just let Matt Reeves do his own thing. I think he will forge something amazing. And now they're not beholden to any of this Snyder era Batman stuff. And yeah, whatever. Let's move past that. This paragraph that I read out kind of speaks to what I was just talking about, and how he's not fully formed, and how Matt Reeves has got to ground him in all of these broken ways, and how he would be in this world today. So yeah, I just, not to reiterate myself again with everything I've been talking about in this video, because I should have read this out earlier probably, but he's just taking the words right out of my mouth. But that is just about everything that Matt Reeves had to say to Nerdist. I know there's a lot of talk about, with the whole illness situation going on, will the Batman be delayed? I really wouldn't be surprised if it would be pushed back. Just thinking about, I can't confirm anything, obviously. It's just that if things aren't going to return to normal like any time immediately soon, I would kind of be surprised if it's still maintained a June 21st 2021 release date. I think it was. It would be cool if it was a Halloween release. It obviously, that sucks, but it would be kind of cool how, this is kind of loosely adapting several different stories in terms of not only Long Halloween, but year one, even though it's not year one, but it's not basically adapting any single one. But I'm just trying to say it would probably suit a Halloween release. It might not, who knows, they might be able to somehow pull it out of the bag, but I'm just saying I'd be surprised if it now releases in June 2021. But everyone, I hope you enjoyed this video of me kind of rambling and just kind of giving my opinion on what Matt Reeves had to say about the movie. It's a lot of stuff that, to be honest, I love to hear about it. It's everything I want from the movie. I feel like, and I've said this and maintained this since day one, this guy really does have the vision for this movie, not only on like a visual perspective, but on an emotional perspective, and that's like the most important thing, and I love the way he described that as well. Let me know what you're thinking of everything, guys, down in the comments below on what I had to say, what he had to say. But if you like this video as well, go ahead and like it. Be sure to subscribe to the channel to make sure you never miss out on a single update like this. I hope you guys are having a good Easter despite everything going on. But thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you, Bat Family, in the next video. Goodbye.